Well, I'm going to tell you, this is going to be fun because here on Crossing the Line, I have my friend, my buddy I've known for so long. He's an amazing leader. He has incredible vision. He is okay. I'm going to go ahead because you heard on the introduction. Yes, he's a preacher, but let me tell you, don't count that. Don't check that box if I'm going to tune out, because he happens to be what he is. He's a leader who happens to be a preacher. And I believe that. I mean, yes, he's called and God knew that, but some people can preach and that's great, but they can't lead. This guy has built an organization around strong, solid leadership. And I've watched him. I've watched him grow through the years. I've watched him develop people and pour into people and grow organizations. He's just amazing. Scott Dawson, welcome to Crossing the Line. Thank you so much for being here, my friend.
It is a privilege to be with you, Larry. Thanks for having me. As you know, you have been a friend for many years. I respect the fire out of you and love what's going on with you guys.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've had some fun together through the years, and I hope we're going to have some more fun as we go into the future in this next season of our life, right? Yes. I want the folks to get to know you, though, Scott. They need to hear about you and how you cross that line from leading with your head, but also leading with your heart. But I want to just take some time and go back to who Scott Dawson was, not who he is, but who he was. And I want you to go back to your childhood, maybe like 8 years old, and describe for me your home. What was it like in your home as an 8-year-old?
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up in a home, loving home, great home, blue collar. My dad was a truck driver. My mom was a daycare worker. So I was one of those latchkey kids back before it got cool, because they were doing it out of necessity. And I was one of those children that were probably overlooked most of the time, until I got to the point where my weight became such a problem. You couldn't overlook me. You could not sidestep Scott Dawson. I walked through the doors as a freshman at Inslee High School here in Birmingham. I was 5'6", but I weighed over 270 pounds. So wow. It was one of those where I had a problem. I wasn't eating to live. I was living to eat. That's how I dealt with stress. It's how I dealt, for what you do for a living, this. That's that trigger factor. Anytime I would go to that, to that escape to deal with any problems I had. I had a speech impediment. I wore very thick glasses. So I was the one that was usually either made fun of or left out. So I understand if this is a leadership podcast, you go, how in the world did this guy get here? And I want to just challenge the leaders right now to look beyond what you can see and see the potential in people. See the ones that are around that are younger, that haven't had the experiences you've had. They've not been where you are, but they've got that raw. I think everyone can be a leader if people would just build into them. I remember the day where I kind of was bought into leadership, and it was through the guru John Maxwell. When I was invited to go to a conference, didn't know what I was getting into. I was just a college kid as a freshman. And when I went and I heard that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you're leading and no one's following you, you're just taking a walk. I went, oh my goodness. And from that day, I started sharpening those inner skills to learn how to lead people. You balance that with Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book, outside of, and you've already told people I'm a preacher, outside the Bible, How to Win Friends and Influence People shaped who I am today, because it gave me the understanding people don't care about what you want. People care about what they want. And a real leader will see down the road and see how you can develop a win-win situation where both of you can get what you want. And so then I kind of picked up those little phrases like, life's like a tennis match. And what you want, everybody says, oh, you want to win. Well, deeper than that, what you want to do is get the ball over the net. If you've ever played tennis with someone who couldn't get the ball over the net, it's not very fun. I mean, you last maybe 30 minutes and then you're finding an excuse to get out of there. Because the goal of tennis, yes, it's to win, but it's to get the ball over the net. So as a leader, I've got to come to the table every time figuring out what can I bring to the table to enhance your life, to improve your life. Because as I'm looking at you, I'm looking further down the road to say, how in the world is it going to be possible for us both to get what we're both desiring?
Yeah, I love that. And Scott, we hear a lot today about being marginalized, and it's certainly a significant and relevant issue in today's culture. I get it. But you understood what that meant because you were marginalized. You were an overweight kid with a speech impediment and thick glasses. So walk us through some of that experience. What was that day like when you were overweight? You knew you had to go to school. You didn't have, or you felt like perhaps you didn't have friends. I don't know. You tell us what was that like for you back then?
Well, you learn and escape. Not only was it food, that's how I dealt with it privately. Publicly, how you deal with it was you better have a good sense of humor. You better be able to handle yourself in a crowd. And I think that has built into me today to be able to stand before crowds every chance I can get in the land of COVID. But back then, it was being able to have a quick wit, to be able to turn the phrase away from myself. They always used to say a wounded dog will bite first. So I had to be careful because if you're not careful, you'll just turn it towards someone else and deflect the pain and try to get someone else into the limelight.
That's right.
And probably several times in high school, I hurt some feelings, but I tried my best to overcome that with maturity to go, I've got to be able to diffuse the situation, and then had to work on myself. You can be addicted to a lot of things and get away with it. But if you're like I was addicted to buffets and desserts and food, you can't get away with that. You can turn the corner and people go, yeah, he's on the rail or he's off the rails. And so I had to discipline myself. I had to learn, and I still battle it today. I mean, I wish some people don't have that battle, but here's the one thing we can all relate to. We all have battles. Every one of us that's listening, we all have battles.
Yeah, that's right.
So you've got to discipline yourself, take care of it. And I remember, if I could just share this story,
Sure.
I was overweight. I had lost weight in high school, gained it back, Larry, and even more in late years of college because I was traveling so much. And I was in seminary, and I was at a place where Dr. Billy Graham was speaking, and I was sitting at a table, and Dr. Graham's assistant was sitting right across from me. And I remember I was about to put mashed potatoes in my mouth, and he said, Scott, God wants to do something in your life, but he can't because you're not disciplined. And I remember looking at my mentor, Louis Drummond, and Dr. Drummond just dropped his head and he said, man, I've been trying to tell you that for 3 years. And I immediately went home, told my wife, look, it's one thing if I don't get into the arena of influence, but if there's doors open for me to get there and I can't get through the door, then that's my problem.
Wow.
And so at that moment, it clicked on me and I just became super disciplined, lost about 80 pounds. And since then, it's just it's a daily regimen of just being disciplined first. The idea of discipline in our society is almost ancient,
right?
But if you will fight the battles that you have to fight today and fight them again tomorrow, eventually you'll overcome them and be able to focus on the future.
You developed that discipline, or you chose to have that discipline at that turning point. And Scott, how did you, from those days where you were marginalized or whatever, how did you find the strength to have that work ethic to sustain that discipline? So you made a decision to do it, but how did you find the strength to follow through the way you did and lose those 80 pounds or whatever?
It's one of those things where you just where you hate to lose. I think you just got to get to the point where you just hate to lose. You're just not going to, losing is not an option. It's one thing if I die without winning, but so help me, I could die without losing. So I'm just not going to lose.
That's amazing. So your journey began, you said determination, your competitive nature, whatever that was, You finally it clicked and you sustained that loss. So you were in college and you heard Maxwell. He talked about leadership. So walk us through that. What's it like for you in college now? Who is Scott Dawson in college?
Yeah, I was again being raised in a very blue collar family, great upbringing, but there wasn't a lot of finances. So I went to a private university. The only way I got in was by the skin of my teeth. So there was no scholarships available. In fact, I remember an English teacher my senior year. She basically changed my life because she helped me to learn how to speak, because
Mm,
I had a lot of street language. I had a lot of bad habits, and she forced me through not only speaking but writing. And it's a principle we know: you speak for a moment, you write for a lifetime. And so that
mm,
kind of got me into college. And so when I was in college, I was speaking a lot. During that time, there was a movement going across our country for churches that allowed young people to come in and speak, called youth revivals. I was speaking in high schools. I tell anyone, if you want to know your leadership level, go stand before a group of high schoolers and see if you can keep their attention for 20
that,
minutes.
that's
I don't
right.
care if you can do it in the boardroom. I don't care if it's in front of your employees. Go do it in front of a bunch of high schoolers and see how big of a leader you are. Anyway,
So
uh,
true.
you know that. So, and then I was working 40 hours a week at a supermarket, just to be able to pay for my college. So again, you just don't want to lose. You find out how you've got to do it. And I remember it was one of the principles from Maxwell. I actually echoed it this morning, so it's still relevant in my life.
Mm,
You're either going to pay today and play tomorrow, or you're going to play today and pay tomorrow. And that
mm.
just constantly goes through
Wow.
my mind every day of that schedule of what am I going to do? Am I going to pay it today and be disciplined, be focused, and get it done? Or am I going to play today and then be one day short of where I want to be tomorrow? So
Scott, that is amazing, and it's the pattern that I see over and over again with successful entrepreneurs, successful businessmen and women, anyone successful in their life. They have somehow found this work ethic discipline that pay it now, work hard now, and they embrace that, and they're not afraid of that. Is that true? Is that where you're going with this?
absolutely. I mean, I used to say, and we'll talk about this later, but there's the statement, entitlements are bad until you start getting them. And then when you get them, you start relying on the entitlement.
That's right.
So what you
That's
got to
right.
understand is in life, pure and simple, there are no entitlements. It is
That's right.
there for you today. And honestly, I think for most successful people that I've interviewed and I've been with, they really don't care for entitlements. If they get
That's
them,
right.
that's fine, but they're not living for them. And what's scary in today's culture is everybody's looking for entitlements.
When's my next check coming? That's the deal for the day. It seems. Hey, Scott, so go back to you were in college and you were speaking, but something happened in your life, and you're a man of faith. We know that and appreciate that about you so much. So I want to give you the opportunity to share that for a moment. Talk to us about the call on your life and what happened and how God called you to do what you do.
Yeah, it actually happened in high school. I was happy go lucky. I was checking off the boxes. I had made a decision, if you will. But in high school, I just started getting passionate about telling people about what Christ had done in my life. And so with that, it wasn't a decision that I was going to be what I am today, an evangelist. It was just I was just passionate about my faith. And then people started having me speak. And when the first time I spoke, I spoke for 11 minutes and I went from Genesis to Revelation twice. I mean, that was all I had. And I mean, but people responded. And then all of a sudden people started talking about this guy named Billy Graham. And I'd never heard of him because I was on the streets. I was in the inner city, found out what he did. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. But here's the principle: you can't do what someone's doing unless you do what they did. And
Mm,
so I had to go back and discover that of doing what he had already done, and that's to be faithful. If you're looking to be a CEO, you can't be a CEO until you do what that CEO's already done, and that's worked his or herself up all the way through the ladder. So for me, when it just all developed, I still don't know where I'm going to end up. I just know I've got thoughts, I've got visions, and even though there's a difference between being content and being satisfied, I will always be content with where I am, but I'm never satisfied. I pray I never become satisfied. I think the day a leader becomes satisfied is the day leadership dies in the leader.
Wow. And Scott, through that call, as you have shared your faith, but you've also have this entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, you started this organization. It's huge now and across the world and dealing with everybody from Major League Baseball to all kinds of conferences, thousands of people. How did you go there? Talk to us a little bit about that entrepreneurial spirit inside of you.
Yeah, I will say the one trait I found about truly successful leaders is they're willing to share. I'll say that about you. I mean, there's never been a time when we've reached out where you weren't willing to help. And I'm thankful to have had the opportunity to be around truly successful leaders my entire life. They may have not been well known as others, but they were always truly successful. The one thing you know about a truly successful leader is there's really one agenda, and that's to do what's best. They want what is best. And so these guys started teaching me how to read a balance sheet, how to cash flow, and things that in seminary you never really learned. I mean,
right.
I knew how to read a Bible, but I was like, man, how do I lead people? That's something you have to go out and really formalize. So I knew I wasn't called to be a pastor. I would love to be a pastor if God had called me, but he didn't call me to be a pastor. I don't think he called me to be a missionary. Maybe I hardened my heart on that, but I was like, that's just does not excite me. So I felt like, what is there an opportunity? Where is there an itch that has not been scratched? And I think that's what the mindset of an entrepreneur is.
Yeah.
What is
That's
the
right.
solution that has not been found for this problem?
Yeah.
Where is there the opportunity that no one seems to be taking? And that has served well. We started doing retreats. We started doing retreats before conferences were really popular.
Yeah.
And I'll just tell you this, my first one, everybody in the world told me they were coming to the conference. Every youth pastor I think I talked to said, we're coming to that conference. I thought I was going to have 1,000. I had 89 because that's the reason we make youth pastors pay before they come now. But anyway.
So true.
So we built the conferences. I had a pastor tell me, a famous pastor say, there's no way you're going to be able to grow this conference. We're going to do it down on the beach in the middle of winter. He said, it's never happened before. It's not going to be successful. Again, I don't want to lose. So what I did was a year and a half, I started meeting with youth pastors all along the Gulf Coast. And I'd go, would you help me for this 1 year? And if they would say yes, I would call them every other week to make sure that they were following through with what they said. And so at a conference that was told was never going to be successful, in 1990, we had 1,000 in attendance and turned away 700 because we didn't have room for them.
Wow.
And it's been growing. Last year we had 18,000 at our student conference in January. And so to me, though, I learned more at that conference with 89 than I did last year with 18,000 because I had to do everything. And if you've got a young leader listening to us or watching right now, and you want it right now, I mean, you want the 18, you want to have the crystal office and just the room in the corner. Can I just tell you, if you will learn now, the things you're learning now are going to pave the way for you to be able to get through the decisions later.
That's amazing and great advice. And at the end of this time together, I'm going to ask you to share some tips for young leaders. So hang on to that.
Absolutely.
And if you're listening, hang on, that's coming. But things kind of took an interesting turn for you not long ago. You were so successful having these conferences, doing your thing, speaking across the globe. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you become a gubernatorial candidate. How in the world did you decide that you're going to run for the governor for the state of Alabama?
Yeah, it was one of those things where I promised people I wasn't drinking. I promise you I wasn't drinking, but yeah. Again, that entrepreneurial spirit, working with Major League Baseball, knowing how to conduct yourself in the boardrooms, building a board that directs our ministry. I've been with leaders, and I know when there's a leadership void. And in our state, the state of Alabama. So if you're elsewhere, you can just look at your own state. But when I jumped in to run for governor, first of all, I didn't want to run. I just knew we had to have some leadership. We had our governor removed from office. We'd had our chief justice removed from office. Speaker of the House indicted on corruption, a backroom deal with our attorney general. And so at one point, there were only 3 of our constitutional officers elected to their position. Everyone else had been either removed or reappointed. And something had to change. And evil wins when good men and women remain silent. So
that's right.
I started trying to find somebody. I became part of a group, and every person we spoke with said, nah, I'm not the one. And they kept looking back at me and going, well, I believe you're the one. And I was like, oh my goodness, no way. But through time and through meditation and study, it became so overwhelming to me that I went, all right, when you don't want to do something, but it's there, let's do it. And I promise you, there is a statement written in both my wife and mine journal. And I think journaling is very important when you're walking through life change. It's the statement, obedience demands no explanation. And I don't know if that's because we're parents and we all want obedient children. And I've learned there's a difference between being obedient and being complicit. A lot of us are complicit. When we understand, okay, we'll do it. Obedience is, I'll do it no matter what. And through that, everybody goes, how in the world can a preacher, I'll go one step further than a preacher, an evangelist. How in the world is that going to compare? But it was amazing. The people I met, walking into a room as being a leader, but also a communicator, man, you can run circles around people that are just talking about policy, because people really get bogged down in policy. But when you're the leader, you're talking about principles. You're talking about the future and being able to craft a picture where people can see it in their minds. We enjoyed it. I tell everyone, every room, and this is documented, we won everyone but one straw poll. We were winning every straw poll. We won their hearts, but the problem is when they went and watched the commercials, we were less than 10% funded than the others with their commercials. And so you can win someone's heart, but the real battle's for the mind. And I think that's for every marketing company out there. You can win the heart, but if you really want to take your market share, you got to win the mind.
You got to, in my vernacular, you got to cross the line from your heart up to your head, right?
Absolutely.
So you ran an incredible campaign, and we were honored to support you in that. But tell me, what did you learn? Give me some takeaways from this experience.
One, trust your gut. I think that's if I were to go back to the campaign now, there were 2 times, and we don't have to get into specifics, but 2 times that I knew what I needed to do, but I didn't trust my gut. I trusted either another person, or I trusted another set of circumstances, and I should have just trusted my gut. So when you're in stressful situations, there's always that battle between what you know you need to do and what others are telling you. So not only trust your gut, but I would say don't get bogged down in the weeds. If you're, I was very fortunate when we first got into it. I networked to a guy named Mike Huckabee, who had he was governor of Arkansas. He was a presidential candidate. He'd been where there was no way I could have known what he knew, but he gave me some great advice. He said, you've got to wake up every day going, if I lose, I will do this again the next time. Not saying you will, But
Wow.
you cannot go into this thinking I'm just going to check this thing out, because in the arena of politics, they do not shoot to wound, they shoot to kill. And you've got to make sure that every day you're all in. You cannot be half-hearted about it. So I had to leave my position. I had to leave everything that I knew in comfort and get out of that into a, and it wasn't when I was young. It wasn't when I didn't have anything.
Right.
This is where I had worked and
Right.
seen blessings where I had it like I liked it. I mean, it was good, but I just had
Yeah.
to trust it because I knew what I had to do.
Any regrets that I mean, from the outside, you ran an incredibly clean campaign, did a beautiful job. We didn't quite get the win that we wanted, but at the same time, you represented yourself and a lot of people as well as your God incredibly well. Any regrets?
You know, probably more lessons learned than regrets.
Mm-hmm.
You can't,
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know. So I feel like I'm seasoned now. We got out of the gate really early. We had signs. We had the best sign campaign in the history of Alabama politics. Somebody told me every 4 miles on the interstate. You can still
Yeah.
find them, and if you find them, if you want to take them down, I'd appreciate it because
Sure.
I get calls still almost every week. So, and I would say probably for me, the lesson that if I were to go back and do it again, and everybody goes, "Are you going to run again?" I always say never. Um, but I do believe this wholeheartedly. If you don't have a path, why waste your time? Because if there's
Mm.
no path, there's really no opportunities. And at this particular moment, it could all change tomorrow, but at this particular moment, I don't see a path. And people who play politics,
Yeah.
isn't that what we're all disgusted about? Isn't it
Yeah.
time for us to put politics aside in leadership? But there's a difference. Um, I used to say politics is about the theory of compromise. Leadership is the theory of excellence. So
Mm.
how can you bring those two together when one's trying to constantly get you to compromise and one's trying to push you towards excellence? It's an interesting dynamic that I'm not sure if we've really fully developed in our society.
Yeah, I agree. That's a dilemma, and boy, that's a great conversation for another podcast. So we'll have to tackle that. I think you're brilliant though to articulate that so well. The difference in leadership and politics, and can you do both? But you're back and you're doing your thing again with incredible success and impacting literally thousands of people. So and I could talk all day. I'd love to just hang out and talk, but we need to probably start closing this thing down. So let me ask you this as we turn that corner. So you have some young leaders out there. She's listening to you. He's listening to you, and listening to this podcast. And the question they have is, Scott, what do we need to know? Give us some tips. What would you say to us as we begin this leadership journey? What are some things that would help us along the way? Give us some tips for the aspiring leaders.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of proverbs. One, it's an Indian proverb, but it says, dig your wells before you're thirsty. Because if
Mm.
you wait till you're thirsty to dig your wells, you're going to end up dying of thirst. That's about relationships. Build relationships now. Don't wait until there's a crisis. Don't wait until you need something.
Mm.
Constantly meet people. I'll say when my daughter went to Samford, her freshman year, I challenged her. I said, by the end of this year, I want you to know every person's name on campus. Every person's name on campus. She didn't quite gain that, but she came so close that she just rose in the level of leadership, and she's SGA president now
Wow.
because people want relationships. We're a very transactional society. Everything's based on transaction. But if you really want to stand out from the crowd, become relational. Because
Mm.
if you have a relationship with a person, it brings a different dynamic to the outcome of the situation. The second thing is an Irish proverb is the best thing you can do for your friends is introduce them to your friends.
Mm.
So
That's great.
not only is it about relationships, it's about not hoarding. Most people want to keep what's theirs, and they feel like leadership is somehow confined or constricted to just what I can get. Larry, I've learned a long time ago, I cannot do every good idea I come up with. In fact, if I try to do every good idea I come up with, it's going to deter me to get where I'm really called to be.
That's great.
So dish it off, man. Share it with friends, share it around a cup of coffee, and allow other people to do what really you're not capable or equipped or passionate about doing. So, dig your wells before you're thirsty. Best thing you can do for your friends is introduce them to your friends. Be controlled by your muscle, not your pulse. Your muscle is consistent. Your pulse is emotional. It will go up and down based on crisis situations. So you better have some type of authority in your life. You better have some way of judging, how am I going to get through this storm or this crisis moment? Be controlled by muscle, not your pulse. And I would say probably the final thing for someone like me, who has the gift of gab, who tries to get by on their personality instead of really studying as much as they really need to study, is tell people what you're going to do and then do it. I got so tired. In fact, I had a friend of mine sit me down and tell me just that, because I was offering people the moon and not being able to deliver anything to them. And he said, I just wish you'd live by this principle. Tell me what you're going to do and then do it. Now, I've kind of expounded on that and say, if I'm telling people what I'm going to do and I don't do it, I'm a liar. But if I do something that I did not tell people who rely on me that I'm doing it, then I'm rogue, then I'm a rebel. So I have to live by both. I have to tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to do it. It's not enough to do it without telling people, because no one can follow you.
That's right.
If I could give you a verse, Habakkuk chapter 2 says, write the vision, make it plain so people can run with it. If you're a CEO, if you're trying to get ahead, let me tell you, this is your perfect formula. Right? It's not enough to have a good thought. Everyone who's ever had a hot shower's had a good thought. Get out of the shower, write it down, write the vision, make it plain, make it where people can understand what you're going to do. Even though this may not be where you end up right now, as a 25-year-old, write down what you're going to do. And then you'll be amazed at how many people come along beside you and literally carry you to where you need to be.
Scott Dawson, you've just given us an incredible call to action. And no matter at what age of leadership, thank you for these incredible tips to live by. Amazing wisdom you have been given. You've been blessed with that. You've been given vision, insight, leadership. I thank you so much for coming on this podcast and sharing with us how you consistently cross the line from your head to your heart. Such a visionary, such a leader, such a man of faith and a man of purpose. Thank you for speaking into the lives of leaders today. I sure do appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks for having me. You are a leader.
Thank you. Take care. God bless.